G'day guys, Matt here from Not in the Manual. Just thought I'd do a quick test today. I left my car outside last night. We had temperatures, you can see that the outside temp there is 9.5 degrees Celsius, and I thought if I left the car out in this temperature all night the battery would be a bit colder than it is, but you can see the cell temp mid's at 14 degrees, the rear stator temp's at 15. So I'm not plugged in at the moment. I didn't plug in, especially so that we'd be down at, we're at 82% state of charge. And just wanted to do this video to show you what it's like in reasonably cold weather, preconditioned and unpreconditioned. So whether you should precondition or not, I'm going to show you that it's not a super huge deal and it's really a personal preference, but I thought the facts are going to speak for themselves, and you'll see. So you can see there at the moment, without being plugged into power, it's not using the rear motor as a heater for the battery. It's purely using the heat pump, and you can see up here what's being drawn by the battery, close to 3 kilowatts. So at the moment it's really trying to heat the cabin and the battery. Now the battery inlet is down at 10 degrees. So that's because it's dragging whatever heat it can from the battery. So when it's circulating that fluid around and sharing the heat from the battery with the cabin through the fluid that's flowing around, it's going to take heat out of that battery. So the battery inlet, that's going to start cooling the battery down even more from when I start now. So when you precondition and you're plugged in, it uses the rear motor as a heater for the battery as well as the heat pump, and it will warm that battery up so that it won't be using that energy, as much energy right now, to try and heat the battery up while you're driving. So you're using that energy while you're plugged in instead. So at the moment, a couple of other figures here, we can see the maximum charge power. If I went to a supercharger right now, I think I'd be lucky to get 25 kilowatts, but that gives you an idea of where the limit's set. My maximum regen power is set at a very similar level, and that's for the same reasons, is protecting this LFP battery from being charged at a low temperature, which can cause damage. So outputting power, remember I was saying that's a low duty cycle compared to charging or longer distance regen braking. So that doesn't, they have to take a risk on that. You need to be able to drive, and it's a lower duty cycle. So you're doing short, sharp stabs of acceleration. It's a bit of a different load for the battery. So what else of note here? I think that's it. You can see that battery inlet is just fluctuating around. You can see that the heat pump or the draw from the battery is backed off a little bit now that the cabin temperature is we're set at 21 degrees. I'm going to leave it set at 21 for both of these tests, but let's get to driving, and I just want to give you an impression of the driving feel, and you'll be able to see for yourself what it's like, regen braking and stuff. So let's get going. All right, now we're driving. This is the first time I've actually driven without preconditioning on a colder morning. I normally precondition for at least 10 or 15 minutes before I drive. Weekdays like now, I usually just schedule departure time for just after 7 AM, and when I get in the car it's nice and comfortable and warm, and the battery's preconditioned. The battery's up at, it normally sits up at about 24-25 degrees when I precondition it when it's plugged in. If I don't plug in to precondition, it doesn't get the battery as warm. It usually sits on about 19 degrees. So if you're plugged into power, it's got that extra bit in reserve, and it seems to kick in the rear motor. I'm not sure if the car was colder, whether it would just kick in the rear motor when it's not plugged in. And taking off here to pick a gap there, the car's accelerating quite nicely. Doesn't feel reduced much there at all. But I'm noticing that regen braking, taking my foot off the pedal there, it's not slowing me down much at all. And that's my whole point with this, is that preconditioning your car before you drive, heating the battery up, it's more about a consistent drive feel, for me anyway. Driving with the battery cold, I think I couldn't find any evidence to say that's going to be, you know, detrimental to the life of the battery or reduce your life of the battery much over time. But I'd prefer to just be cautious, warm the battery up. You're getting other benefits to that. You're getting a nice warm cabin when you get in the car. The battery's warm, so you're getting more of a consistent drive feel. So there at the moment, yeah, it's definitely not one pedal driving. I actually didn't think it was going to be this bad. Battery's still at 14 degrees. It's really not heating up very quick, very fast at all. Battery inlet's at 13.8 degrees. So it's really not heating the battery up very fast at all. So even if I was to give it a couple of stabs of acceleration and bring that motor temperature up, it really still seems like it's trying to keep that motor at 30 degrees. It's not letting that motor get warmer like it does for supercharging and really sort of unrestrict. Let's see if I can keep the one pedal driving going. Releasing the pedal here. It's still doable, you've just got to plan a bit further ahead. So 25 kilowatts of regen limit that I've got there at the moment is still usable at low speeds. So before, when I was driving, I was doing 70 kilometers an hour and I could hardly feel the regen braking. But at lower speeds in traffic like this, it's still usable regen. You still need to plan a bit further ahead. Yeah. That's still, it's usable. So this speed's 60 kilometers an hour. If you keep a good distance between you and the car in front, then I think it's no problem. I don't think I've used the brake pedal yet. I'm not sure if you guys can see the brake pedal there. Oh, they've slowed down a bit quick. Still, no, I've got to press the pedal. That guy slowed down a bit fast there. So yeah, these slower speeds, 20 kilometers an hour sitting in traffic here, no problem. You can still one pedal drive. It's not pushing the brake pedal down yet, only now for the hold feature, hold function. So yeah, I think, you know, it hasn't converted me not to precondition the car at all. I'm going to go straight back to preconditioning tomorrow morning. I don't like the feel of that, this cold battery. So battery inlets there, 12.9. See, if I was to turn the HVAC down to like super low, it'll take the heat from the cabin and then start putting it into the battery. So I'll have kicked in the AC compressor to cool the cabin down. Battery inlets, you know, rising rapidly. It's already up at 20 degrees. Yeah, I'm not liking that cold air, so we'll put it back to 21. So the battery inlet's at 21, 21.3, 21.4. Yeah, that wouldn't be a very pleasant way of trying to heat your battery up anyway. So battery's still sitting at 14.3. Look, if you can't precondition your car for some reason, I don't know, it's still drivable, but you just need to be wary that it's, well, here we go. Let's see if it can pull up, foot off the pedal. Down a bit of a hill here. that's still okay. As long as you're paying attention, you could still drive one pedal. Yeah. Battery cell temp's still at 14.3. It's really not just that battery inlet. You know, the cabin's sucking the heat from the battery and not letting it heat up. Yeah, this is the coldest morning I've done this on. It's once that whole system is preconditioned and warmed up, it's really just changes the dynamic of how this all works. You got better regen. Those temperatures stay a bit more consistent. You don't really see the battery inlet temperature fluctuating around as much. So that whole preconditioning, I guess, it's equivalent to sitting there with an old ICE engine and letting it warm up a bit before you start driving. I guess that sort of gets all the clearances and between all the mechanical parts in an engine and heats up the oil and gets everything at that optimal running temperature to prolong the life of an engine. Well, bit different with the battery electric car, but similar sort of principle. There's no way I could do a test, not preconditioning for 10 years and to see if it, and then a car that has preconditioned every day for 10 years to see what effect that has on degradation. That would be a very, very difficult test to do, but I think preconditioning is something that's easy to do. I think if you've got a work commute where you need the battery charged to 100% to make it to work every day, maybe this standard range car wouldn't be the car for you then with the LFP battery. But preconditioning, whether you're plugged in or not, I think it is really worth it after doing this test this morning. And that consistent drive feel, really, what I was saying before, comes into play a lot more. So guys, this is going to take forever. I'm not going to film my whole trip. I'll just give you an update when I get to work on where the battery temperature's at. So I've still got probably another 15 k's to go to get to work. Another 25 minutes or so. We'll see how much the battery heats up in that time. Okay, I'm about halfway to work now. Not much change. Max regen power's gone up to 26 kilowatts. So not much of a jump. Battery temperature's still at 14.8, so a little bit better. Battery inlet's still sitting around 14.6. So yeah, not much has happened. Look at this big hill, feet off the pedals. I'm gonna have to, I've been using the brake pedal a lot more. Have to put my foot on the brake pedal for that one. So yeah, normally I'm not using the brake pedal much. I've got a bit of a habit of leaving my foot on the brake pedal when I'm stopped, but normally with driving with a preconditioned battery, preheated battery, no problem. I'm driving one pedal all the way to work. But yeah, I didn't expect it to be this different. Yeah, and I didn't expect it to take this long to heat the battery up. I really thought by now I'd probably be up at 20 degrees or something by now, but it's really just not letting that motor temperature come up to help assist heating the battery in the cabin. Maybe that's something they might do in the future. I mean, that's an easy way. Just take that temperature restriction off the motor, let the motor heat up to, even just let the motor heat up to 35-40 degrees. That's not going to hurt the motor. I really don't know why they do that, why the target temperature of the motor can't just be raised a bit, just to help that battery heat up a bit quicker. And I think that's part of the issue here, is so much heat's being sapped out of the battery, being scavenged into the cabin to keep the cabin warm. I've only got it set to 21. It's not that warm. And yeah, I mean, that's the good thing about a Tesla, I guess. You know, all this data's going back to Tesla, and hopefully they'll improve this over time. But that's taking so long for the battery to heat up, and I think I'm seeing preconditioning as more and more important for this consistent drive feel. I'm really not enjoying this at all. Yeah, brake pedal again. So the other thing I didn't point out before, my eyesight is good enough to drive, but I've had trouble with my eyesight for years. I've had a cornea transplant in both eyes, and my right eye was only sort of not even a year ago I had that surgery. So I struggle with tiny little fine print sometimes, and not sometimes, all the time. So I really do struggle with this power gauge at the top here. And I read on notateslaapp.com, the website, the next, it's a good source to see what's coming up in future software updates. And there's some good articles on there about Tesla and electric vehicles, so that's a good website to go to. You've got the dot limitation up here, which shows you it can limit both sides if you've got a power limit or a regen limit. So I'm back up to, so I got the kilowatt limit. Normally it sits at 239, the power limit, max discharge power. It's a 237. It was 236 before, so really there wasn't a limitation there at all. I wouldn't class that as a limitation. Definitely not enough to show up as a power limitation on this side of the energy bar. The other side of the energy bar, I can see I've got a lot of dotted lines there. I've got no chance of being able to count those, but there is some relation between how many of those little dashes there are there and your limitation, the regen limitation. So I think it's as a percentage or something there. So I've never used that because I can't. I mean, it's pretty silly. You wouldn't sit there and count all those dots while you're driving anyway. I can just see that there's a pretty harsh limitation there. One thing I've noticed, when I have a lower state of charge, because lower voltage means higher current to do the same job with the battery, the battery does tend to just heat up a bit quicker. The battery's under a lot, it's giving out a lot more current flow to not a lot more, but just enough. It's working a bit harder at that lower percentage, lower voltage, and it heats up a bit quicker. And I find preconditioning with a lower state of charge as well. Sometimes I try not to charge at home, so what I'll do is I'll set a limit at home of, I might just charge up a couple of percent, just take it up to the next even round number of 60, 70% or whatever, just so I can have the car plugged in for preconditioning in the morning. So it can kick that rear motor in and get the battery a bit warmer. Yeah, and then show you plugged in versus not plugged in. I'm not too sure whether I'll do another 2 separate morning tests. So tomorrow morning I'll have the car parked outside still. We're still due for another coolish morning tomorrow morning. And I'll have it plugged in outside so that it'll precondition while it's plugged in. But the only difference between plugged in and not plugged in might be 3 or 4 degrees in the temperature of the battery. Plugged in, of course, you're not then going to take energy from the battery to precondition. You'll be taking it from your wall socket, and that's something that I spoke about in my efficiency video, that if you're doing a long trip and you want to maximize your consumption, you want to have a better energy consumption for your trip, then precondition your car plugged in. That way you're taking energy from your wall socket to precondition the car, you're not taking it out of the battery, and then your car isn't then trying to heat up the battery while you're driving. Looking at that this morning, the car is hardly even trying to heat this battery up, so possibly that won't affect your consumption. But I'm going to do a comparison between the consumption on this trip, because it's the same distance, similar time, day to day, and I've got a pretty consistent consumption to work. So my consumption at the moment is at 116 watt hours per kilometre. So it normally sits, you know, just over 100 watt hours per kilometre to work, and it's pretty efficient because it's mostly downhill. So what I'll do is do this test again, but I'll have the car sitting outside and actually plugged into power, and I'll keep it around the same 80%. I'll set the charge limit to 80% and let it precondition off the wall socket, and we'll see how that goes. But just thought I would give you a quick sort of mid trip update, and then when I get to work we'll run through some figures. Guys, I'm pretty much at work, not far away from work now. So this trip, 21 kilometers, 33 minutes, 125 watt hours per kilometer. Now that's the thing that really struck out. Before, when I showed you the average energy, I'd just come from a long downhill run, and that probably fudged that figure a little bit. As soon as I got onto the flat section, it came back up again. The battery temperature is still at 16 degrees. So really over that 34 minute trip, it didn't heat up that much at all, only a couple of degrees. So I'm not convinced. I'm just going to go back to preconditioning the car. We'll have a look how it goes tomorrow. We'll compare the consumption. So the big thing for me, and the reason why I chose my trip to work, was partly main reason was because it's colder in the morning and I wanted to do this test cold. But the other reason is my trip to work is a lot of downhill. So if we look at the energy graph for the last 25, yeah, it's not really showing it there. Look at the trips again. So yeah, it's a lot of downhill, and on a good day, I can get 90 watt hours per kilometer to work, and that's preconditioned. So I think efficiency, you know, suffers if you don't precondition, and this is proof. I wasn't sure how much effect that would have, but because this is a mostly downhill commute to work, obviously that regenerated energy, you know, plays a big part in that consumption on my way to work, which I knew anyway. That's obvious, but this test will prove that. And I think tomorrow, so my regen limit's now at 29 kilowatts, so it's still not that great. When I back off here on the throttle, the accelerator now, I'm getting some regen braking. You can feel it's pretty weak though. I'm not impressed. I'm going to go straight back to preconditioning. Whether you're plugged in or not, I think there's a real benefit to it. I know you're going to use energy to precondition before you drive, but when you're not plugged in, I don't think it's that great. It's that big a deal. I think I might end up doing a third day where we precondition the car when it's not plugged in, and just look at how much energy it uses for that. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you tomorrow morning with a nice preconditioned car with consistent regen braking. I'll catch you tomorrow morning.